let's get right into it. Nelson, talk about Gianpiero Lambiase leaving Red Bull Racing. The dates on it are a little muddled, let's say, because one is saying that he's done at 2028, and the other is saying, well, he's going to be working for us in 2028. Gianpiero Lambiase going to McLaren for one of those years. He has to do a gardening leave at some point, Nelson. But when you woke up on Thursday morning, what did you make of this news?
It sounded and it read to me like Zak Brown, working ahead, getting ahead of something and trying to put into place some plans that he has for the future. And Gianpiero Lambiase is a huge catch for any team. We knew there was interest in him before. This is a step up for him. They've tried at Red Bull to give him a bigger role, but ultimately his main job in the weekend is to be race engineer to Max Verstappen. And this is a clear step towards how we read it, the team principal role, Andrea Stella's role at McLaren. It feels like something that could lead to being the big boss under Zak Brown within that team, but that's perhaps for the future.
Yeah, so the message that I've received from McLaren and then spoken to others is Gianpiero Lambiase is going to join the team as the chief racing officer. He's going to report into team principal Andrea Stella, and we can get into the Stella stuff a little bit later. But I think for GP, I mean, this really does sound like he needed a move, wanted a move, and he got it. I mean, there were other teams out there who were going after him for his services. I mean, Williams is one. Aston Martin really pursued GP quite aggressively, not only last year, but also in the wintertime as well.
Yeah, clearly, and it is one of the more talented people in already a very talented paddock. It's logical, and he's been in this post for years and years now. He's extremely experienced, but also he knows what is needed to win. He's not just experienced in F1, but also in one of the top teams. So there is just vast knowledge there. And there seems to be a willingness also to move up into a bigger role. He's not just seemingly content with being just a race engineer, although that may be one of the best jobs in the paddock. But yeah, he's bound for bigger things, it seems.
Yeah, and I think like when he had gotten that promotion within Red Bull Racing last year, I think that a lot of that had to hinge on the fact that, you know, Aston Martin was pursuing him quite aggressively to come over and be their team principal at the time. I think for GP though, when you sign on to make a move, I mean, it has to be the right one, and I think that this may speak a little more loudly about what's going on with Aston Martin at the moment in terms of not getting their house in order, but maybe just making sure the structures that they're trying to build within Aston Martin are a little more cohesive, clear, and straight lining through everything instead of being a little more jumbled. And I think that's what, you know, Adrian Newey has to do right now over at that team. I think that's always been the job. I don't know if GP wanted to go there and have to do that, right? I mean, going to McLaren is a smarter move at this time because they really do have a clear working structure set up around them. We circle back and talk a little bit more about Aston Martin because this does actually paint a clearer picture of what they're trying to do over there with trying to get Jonathan Wheatley in the front door, which again, at this moment, they haven't. He hasn't signed anything, and he's still working out his contract negotiations with Audi at the current moment.
Yeah, it's crazy that there is just not a blueprint to what works and in terms of an organizational diagram for F1. It seems like everybody's continuously trying to adjust and redefine roles and adding roles, adding management layers, taking them away. Why is it, just a very open question, so difficult for these teams to all latch on to a organizational structure that really works for what is needed for F1? Even McLaren, one of the best run teams in F1, is looking to add another layer to take away something, or perhaps take away some burden from Andrea Stella. What is it about F1 at the moment which makes it so difficult to get away from the jumble, as you describe it, at Aston Martin and really find what works. And Aston is really looking forward to that. And that's why it's so strong by Zak Brown and McLaren, because they're ahead of the curve in this respect.
What do you think this signals for Max? I mean, when we look at it, obviously at this moment, Max isn't a huge fan of these regulations. We've talked about it quite often on this show about him potentially leaving Formula One, potentially taking a sabbatical, could retire. Obviously, he's not very happy at the moment. The car isn't the greatest, but GP and Max have a very, very close relationship. I think it's probably one of the closest in terms of that driver and race engineer on the grid. The only other one I can really ever compare it to is probably Hamilton and Bono, but I think this one runs a little bit deeper even than that relationship was. I mean, Max in the past had even said, like, if GP's not here, then I'm not going to be here, essentially. So, yeah. I don't know. What do you make of all of it?
Well, there are a couple of angles to look at. First of all, from the Red Bull perspective. Why is it that the bleeding hasn't stopped in terms of losing talent? Because what I'm hearing at the team is not just GP. There are a couple of other names within the organization, maybe not high-profile names, but important names, high-level mechanics leaving. What is it that is happening there that Laurent Mekies hasn't been able to stop? Is this still part of like people that were brought in by Horner that are trying to jump ship like Wheatley did and others have? Or is there something else going on here that we're not really registering? So there's that, and that's fundamental to the future at Red Bull. Then Max Verstappen. Today came from a Dutch motorsport news outlet, Race Express, an interesting interview with Jos Stappen done at a rally stage. He was, by the looks of it, testing one of his rally cars, his WC2 car, and he was quite interesting in his answers. He said, first of all, we knew. We've known for quite some time, and we told GP to take it with both his hands, grab this chance, and we will have, this is a very interesting line, we will have 2 more years to enjoy working with GP at Red Bull. That's specifically what Jos said. And then he said it's now up to Red Bull to find a suitable replacement for Max, to work with for Max instead of GP. Now, how this influences what Max is momentarily going through is dependent on how you read the situation with Max. How serious is he about leaving? Is it a combination of factors that an interview that you do straight out of the car after a very disappointing Grand Prix? Is there more going on there? I think he's trying to pull every lever he's got, every bit of influence he has, as well, like most see him the fastest driver in F1 at the moment, the best F1 driver, arguably, on the grid at the moment, to change, to redirect the course that F1 has set. And this week, and we'll touch upon this later in this pod, this week, this month is very important to that. But apart from him staying, sabbatical, leaving, personally I feel he's staying, but we'll see. Will he stay at Red Bull? Because this team is not the team it once was. And we rave about Mekies. We've done this on the show as well. But there needs to be a course correction here. That car is, you've seen the onboards. It's a handful. It's problematic at the front and the rear. It compounds what Verstappen is feeling about the regulation because the car is so incredibly uncompetitive. And there needs to be a seismic shift here. What big talent is Mekies, is the Red Bull organization bringing in to replace all these big names? And that's a big question mark, and I haven't really gotten an answer to that. So setting aside the problem that Max has with F1 currently, and if they can solve that, if they are putting something forward that he can embrace a little bit more for next year as well, he needs to be happy that this team won't be an also ran. And you know, Dutch media already is full of speculation that GP moving to McLaren means that he will follow him. This will follow Max whatever happens. Every team that's doing well will be linked to him because he's that good. He's that good of a driver. For me, it's a wait and see because after last summer, who knows? Let's let him make any decisions on that. But it is interesting that McLaren is so far ahead of the curve with these signings that it could put them in an interesting position as well.
Interesting to hear that from Jos. I mean, Jos and Max are obviously extremely close. So I think if one is saying one thing where, you know, he's with us for the next 2 seasons and they're going to have to find someone for the next season after that, I think that's very telling of what Max may end up actually doing. I honestly couldn't picture Formula One right now or even into the future without him in it, being he's the greatest driver on the grid.
Exactly. Picture the boardroom of FOM, knowing that your championship's worth is its popularity and its main talent, and you leave the 2025 season with a well-deserving champion in Lando Norris, a new young champion, and a driver that almost staged the comeback of the century and is regarded as the best driver. You've got the GOAT in Lewis Hamilton, and you've got the best qualifier maybe since Senna in Charles Leclerc. And all 4 of these marquee names are extremely unhappy with what you've done to F1. That will influence your decision making and the urgency for F1 to make changes to figure this out together with the FIA. So that's what I mean with the levers that being pulled. And for me as well, whatever Max does, if he remains in F1, it will come with greater freedom outside of the weekends, because that's what he needs. That is what he's forcing Red Bull to agree to anyway. And he's good enough to demand it. If you have the opportunity, do it.
Yeah, the thing I think with Max Nelson is the fact that, like, if he's not being heard or if they're not listening to him, like, he will walk away. Like,
to prove a point. Yes.
To prove a point for sure. I mean, we've seen him do things like outside of that, obviously, but we know that he is capable of saying, you know, forget it and drop everything and walk away from it. I do believe that if he doesn't feel like he's being heard, he could quite possibly do that for sure. But
yes, but I think that lesson has been learned over the last few weeks.
Hey, you there. Did you like that video? Would you like to see more? If you like what Nailing the Apex has to offer, you should check out more of our content and subscribe to our Nailing the Apex channel by clicking the subscribe button.